All right, well, good morning, developers. Welcome to the Samsung DevCon 2014. Pretty excited to have you guys here. This is going to be an awesome time. If you are here for the HTML5 introduction to app development, you're in the right place. If that sounds, I'm not seeing any blank stares, so that's good. That's good. All right. My name's Sebastian Barthelmess. This is Swale Nunez. We work with the relatively new enterprise business app department at Samsung. And we do enterprise and any kind of app development. A lot of years between the two of us. Yeah. November is actually, in a couple weeks here, this is actually kind of an exciting time, special time for me. It'll be 30 years of development for me.
And I just turned 30, so.
And you just turned 30. I was 8 when I got my first Trash 80. And it was a choice, my parents gave me a choice between an Atari or a computer. My buddy up the road had an Atari, so I'm like, let's try the computer route. So I did it and never looked back. That thing was empty. You turn it on, and a little blinking cursor, no programs, no anything. You had to build to make it work. So this is going to be an introductory course. We will gauge if you guys want to go in depth on some of these topics more. We can definitely go that route. So it's meant to be interactive, and this is for you guys. So we're here to help you out with any questions you may have. So please feel free to ask, especially during the second section or the second half of this workshop. So with that, this is my good friend Swale and also my coworker. So he is here with us. What do you want to?
I can just add a few extra things. I mean, I think you did a really good job. Just to kind of, so we're both on the northeastern side. He's in Boston. Myself, I'm in New York City. And as, like he said, we are involved in the whole Samsung 360. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that solution or what exactly we're offering there. Has anybody heard of it? Samsung 360, where we offer the full service, everything from app development to we actually device support, and it's cross-platform. So we don't necessarily only target our Samsung platform. We also offer support for other devices as well. And it, like I said, it covers the full spectrum, everything from support to app development as well. Outside of that, as he mentioned, the first part of this would be mainly theory, kind of get an idea, familiarize you guys with enterprise application development from a web standpoint, and then later on we'll go into the lab. And we actually have some pretty good demos. I saw a few earlier today, and it was actually amazing. With that, I think we should get started, unless anybody has anything they want to kind of just throw out there before we get started. Any expectations? Can we start off with that? Does anybody have any expectations outside of? Go ahead. I can't hear you. Oh, to learn more. There
right.
You go.
Excellent. We like that. That's a good start.
At least that.
So we're going to show you, I believe in showing the technology, right? So you can go out and Google stuff, right, if you want to get demos and look at things emulated or see screenshots. We're going to show them live on devices. We have a myriad of stuff here to project out to you. So again, feel free to ask questions. We're also going to, during the lab part, get your environment set up on each of your laptops. I know everyone's probably coming at different stages of development. So, and different, I see Macs, I see PCs. There's probably a Linux guy in here somewhere.
He's scared to raise his hand.
So we'll work across multi-platforms here to get that going for you.
Lastly, can we gauge the audience, kind of who has done any web development before?
So raise your hand if you built a website.
Everybody has.
Come on,
so
come on. Who's
leave.
on Facebook? Anyone on Facebook? Oh, no, wow, all the hands went down. Okay, so if you built a website, that's the beginning, right, of hybrid app development. So without further ado, now, any Java developers? Java, okay, excellent.
.NET.
.NET, well, they raise their hands, excellent. And Symbian, Windows OS, all right. And BlackBerry, any BlackBerry developers out here? None, all right. Had to ask. All right, well, let's get into it. So, HTML5 app. Who can tell me what an HTML5 app is built out of? I'll give you a hint. 3 things, and they're up on the screen in pictures. All right?
There's no prize, but if you raise your hand, we can pretend like you'll get a prize
That's
at the
right.
end of
We have great prizes and giveaways, guys. So it's simple. It's HTML5, which is really just mock-up. Greater than, less than symbols with different tags inside, right? Head, body. I believe we can make all these available. We're going to give you a USB key with a bunch of installation tools and documentation on it. And hopefully we can get you this after. I didn't put it on purpose because there's always some issue, but I believe.
It is being recorded as well, too, so you can always watch this
Yep.
at a later time. So your best faces, guys.
So HTML, CSS, so style sheets, right? Cascading style sheets, which is really just a mock-up for how you're going to arrange your pages. So you build the pages in a simple language, looks like an XML type language. You mock it up with CSS. That's actually more optional, right? You could just build a simple website with no CSS, and we'll go through this during the lab part where you'll get to see it and do it yourselves. And then JavaScript. So JavaScript is really it's the core underneath. It's what gets you to the lower levels of the device. It's really your programming language in this technology stack. So if there's anything you can't do on the simple HTML and CSS layers, you go into JavaScript to do it. And this also handles your backend connections and, say, access to device-specific things like your camera, accelerometer, GPS. So that's the JavaScript side. Mentioned a few things here. So a website, right? What can you always guarantee with a website? Anyone? What's going to always be there on a website? Pop-up ads. Yes. Get that man a T-shirt. Content. Excellent. I'm thinking something specific. With a website, you're going to it, right? You're connected to it, so the internet is inferred, right? There's connectivity built in. So one of the first things you have to think about with an application is you may not have internet access. You may be in the subway. You may be on the fringe with a mobile device where you're not getting good coverage. Up in my neck of the woods, well, actually San Francisco's pretty hilly here too, but we have granite up in New Hampshire and Boston area. And cell phone signals don't go through granite very well. So big hills, bad signal. You have to be constantly aware that the person that's using your application may not be connected. So that's one of the differentiators once you move from a web page to an application. So offline storage, you have this canvas element, pretty cool design in HTML5 where you can render WebGL, really 3D accelerated graphics, basically, on this pane that's outside of the browser itself, right? So it's embedded inside it, but it's outside of the scope of the browser and the memory space. And geolocation, accelerometer, all the fun things that you have on a phone that you don't have on your desktop computer come into play with these types of apps. One of the biggest draws to doing HTML5 development is it's easy, right? Everyone raised their hand here when we asked if you'd built a website or if you had at least thought about building a website, right? There's also the cross-platform. We've been promised cross-platform since Java came out, right, back in the day. How's that worked out for you guys? It hasn't worked out well for me. You'll build it, and then you go and you try and run it on one of these or some random device or a BlackBerry, right? We mentioned that. And it doesn't work. There's not a runtime for it, or you're constantly dealing with memory issues because of the way the heap works in Java. You don't have the same control that you would with a native C type of compiler, right? So HTML5 has really made it easy enough to spread across all these devices since there's so much code out there. And it runs on, because everyone needed a browser on every device, so it's everywhere. So now we finally have a platform that really does run on your Macs, on your netbooks, on phones, on devices, embedded devices, on your TV, pretty soon your toaster, right? So this is really finally becoming a realization. So that bus is left. So we have a cross-platform development environment now, and this is really it. And enterprises. So when we get into more our enterprise focus, who likes to make money, right? Everybody, okay? All right. So there's game development and there's enterprise development, right? So there's a very, I've posted games to the App Store before and, not made a penny. Down the enterprise track, there's definitely a huge untapped potential in the mobile market specifically, and wearables that are coming up for this. So this is an exciting time. You guys are the groundbreakers for this. So keep that in mind. Lastly, I see this as an advantage and a disadvantage, especially for JavaScript. But for this type of environment, there are tons of libraries. You go to node.npm.org, you can find thousands of modules and libraries for JavaScript. You go just Google searching for any kind of data on this type of development. It's everywhere. It almost becomes overwhelming. So much of what we've done is reduce that to the best of breed for you to get you started in the right direction. And that's what you'll find in the lab section here coming up. But there is an abundance of development and resources to get you started. And lastly, there's no specific requirement. Build in whatever you want. Again, this can be a disadvantage because some of us come from backgrounds where we're used to having everything in a single IDE and everything flows, everything works together, versus now you might be building in a command line interface to try to deploy to devices. And so you have a lot of options, but having no requirements can sometimes be a little daunting. So we'll guide you through that as well. Anyone want to guess how many different types of Android devices are out in the market right now? Guess, and then guess again, because it just changed.
Literally just now.
Just now. It doubled. It is astounding. All right, and this is just Android alone. So, and this is just Samsung alone. This picture's already outdated after weeks, right? So you have to keep this in mind that this can run on a lot of different devices. So we're looking for lowest common denominator sometimes. Other times you're looking for, there's this certain feature that I really need, and I'm going to build for only that and make sure the app doesn't install on the other types of devices. So keep in mind device spread and device sizes and device screen sizes. Again, HTML, there are some very cool tools to help keep this manageable for you. We'll guide you through that as well.
Yeah, sure.
All right, where's mine?
All right, things to consider when doing mobile web development. Now, I looked at this slide earlier today, and I noticed we highlighted touchscreen as opposed to highlighting gestures, and then a part of gestures it being touchscreen. Because now, especially with our new Samsung devices, it also incorporates motion and hand gestures as well. So you want to take that into consideration. Generally, when you use your laptop, unless it's the newer laptops that have actual touchscreen capabilities, I don't see anybody really touching their screen. So when you build mobile, every mobile device will have that capability. And like I said, with the existence of these motion detectors and motion sensors on the devices, you have to account for that too. And then as the consumers adjust to this and adapt to this, you want to make sure that your applications actually meet the standard. You don't want to be that application that still requires, and then I should not say that because I would take a shot at keyboards, but you don't want to be that application that your only input would be keyboards. So you want to be able to utilize the touchscreen capabilities, gestures capabilities as well. We have our S Pen, and outside of the typical ability to actually use the pen and give you that real feel of signing a document or actually taking input, the S Pen also comes with an additional menu that you have additional functionality. Like you can literally, I wish we had one to demo, but you can actually take that S Pen and create a separate window and have a multi-window capabilities where you can interact between two windows on the same screen, which is amazing. So if you can have that built in within your application, that would be good as well. Adaptive UI, screen orientation, screen size, the layout, going from one device to another device, because in the older devices, you build one time. If there's a new OS, you have to adapt to it. If there's, and we spoke about the number of different Android devices out there. And usually, you'd have to actually build for each one of these devices and adjust your UI for each. Now with the adaptive UI using CSS, instead of putting like absolute sizing, you can do percentage. That way you can adapt as well. I was reading up earlier about CSS regions, which can be used to kind of, a lot of people use that to kind of get this adaptive UI going. Limitations. I want to say maybe 95% of the audience raised their hand about building web app or done web app development before. This is one of the key things you always want to consider. I think when you're in the moment and you're building these applications, sometimes you forget that you're actually building for mobile, and then you kind of unaware of the limitations you might have from a hardware perspective or an OS perspective. And it's totally different. You're going night and day when you're comparing your actual machines to your actual device. And then we hold our mobile devices to a higher standard than we do our actual laptops. Like for example, if one of you guys get the blue screen of death right now, it's just Microsoft being Microsoft, or that's just how it is. We restart and we go back to normal. If it happens on our mobile device, we might not even use that application again because it crashes too much. So the expectation is a little higher for our mobile devices, even though there's actually limitations. I spoke about the sensors and the hardware, especially from a gesture perspective. There's also the GPS accelerometer. So and it kind of plays well with using the wearables, as Seb was mentioning. You can build these applications as it incorporate the gestures and the GPS and the accelerometer, and you can build these and incorporate it with different applications, and then you can communicate back and forth. Similarly with the different APIs with the visual hardware, cameras, and video as well. Now, a key thing to note when you're building web application, mobile web applications, that there is some limitations of access to core APIs. Obviously, to get the full capabilities of the device, you'd have to build native. But the key with enterprise, with building HTML5 applications, some of these frameworks give you the ability they create this JavaScript abstraction layer, and it gives you access to some of the core capabilities of the device as well. So there is some limitations. I think those limitations are more along the lines when you're actually building games, like those intensive applications. Now, we have a demo of this app that I was looking at earlier. It looks amazing. I still don't believe it's JavaScript, but we'll actually demo it. And then you guys can tell me we can do it. I should not have said that. We should have just demoed the application. We raise our hands if it's native or is it HTML5. We still can do that, though. We can pretend I never said what I just said. And then we can do that. And lastly, battery life, and I think that goes along with network. One, when you use your laptop, typically, I can almost guarantee everybody's plugged in right now. So how many laptops are plugged in by raising hands? How many cell phones are plugged in? Similar to what I was saying, the expectations we set higher expectations for our actual devices than we do for our actual laptops. I've always heard, every day you walk out, somebody will complain about their battery life on their device. It doesn't matter what brand, what company makes it, everybody complains. There's never enough battery within your device. But your laptop is just standard. You just plug it in wherever you go. You can have 100% charge. You still plug it in. It's customer. That's what you do. And I remember we did a presentation a while back. I think it was in London. And you made a comment that says the number one, well, it's obvious. The number one what takes away from your battery is the network connection, establishing a connection. And then I think it was a push and pull, and to actually retrieve data and push data, it's 10 times. I don't remember the exact figures you put together.
I think it's actually 100 times the power to transmit than it is to receive a wireless signal. So if you think about that on your phone, it's constantly chewing it up.
So basically, those are the kind of things you want to keep in mind when you're building mobile apps, especially when you're building mobile applications. And as you build, I always use this idea that only take along with you what you need. Like if I were to ask you to change a light bulb, I don't expect you to come in with a saw, a drill, a complete tool belt with a flashlight, and you don't need that. You might need a screwdriver to maybe unscrew something, or you might not even need a screwdriver. You just need your hands to kind of, how many developers does it take to change a light bulb? That's a joke, right? I don't even know if it's a joke, but that could work. But that's that mentality. You don't want to go in with more than you actually need. So don't put all this stuff into a mobile application only to kind of, because it'll have negative effects on your actual experience, the user experience of your application. Take what you need, and that's it. So hybrid applications. So hybrid application is basically the combination of both, like the powers of both, like Captain Planet. And that's how you, bipolar audience, who grew up on Captain Planet? Was Captain Planet, who was before Captain Planet? Who was after Captain Planet? I guarantee you these two guys don't know who Captain Planet is. So that's my age. I can guess your age based off that. But anyway, so it's a combination of both. It takes, uses your web technology that we spoke on, but what it does, it wraps it within a native container. And that container gives you the access to a lot more of the APIs and a lot more access to the devices. And what happens is the web resources on the device, usually it's a WebKit rendering engine that actually does the HTML, renders HTML locally, so as opposed to having it to hit an external source. And then all this information, and as I mentioned, the abstraction layer is what connects to the device. A couple of things that you want to keep in mind here is because of this, you actually have these offline capabilities. You can do local store and that sort of stuff. And I always stress the importance of offline capabilities because, as Seb mentioned, I live in New York City, and I have to make sure that I'm still getting my job done, even when I'm in the subway and I'm in between buildings, or I can literally lose signal walking down one block because of these tall buildings. So it's always important to kind of utilize the offline capabilities when you're building these applications, and then the moment you get a connection, you synchronize with your back end. There you go, sir.
All right. So here's just a taste of a few of the excellent libraries that are out there. Now, I said there were a lot. There are. These are a few that I recommend. Some of them are brand new, like Famous is a good example of one that's still trying to determine if it's ready for prime time or not. You have these ones across the top tend to be more graphically oriented. PhoneGap is more of how you're actually going to push stuff out. Don't worry about this. Again, all this is going to be on the drives that you guys get here shortly. So, jQuery is used almost synonymously with JavaScript now. Anyone heard of jQuery? Okay, so it's everywhere, right? It's $, whatever, right? So it's very common syntactic language that's really just meant to be a toolkit for JavaScript to basically shorthand it, and then it just became, everyone started using it. So that's one example. Backbone is kind of an up-and-coming, competing with the likes of AngularJS from Google. It's really, you pick what you like and what you can understand, definitely at this stage. Don't be overwhelmed by these choices. Any of these will be good picks. But definitely look at what you're building, what you want to build, how quickly you need to build it. That's how I started doing HTML development, rapid app development. I just had to pound stuff out. You get 3 days to build something. Good luck doing that in a compiled language, especially something strongly typed like C or Java. But you can pull it off here. And then when you look at the end product, you're like, hey, that actually came out pretty good. This actually does what the customer wanted. Why would I go anything more than this? So then a few of the newer ones, like Handlebar. Ember isn't up there. That's one that I personally like a lot for handling backend data and keeping that data synchronized back and forth. jQuery Mobile is incredibly popular in the enterprise because they're just building forms and they tend to come, it's much more web-based. If you're a web designer, you'll be more used to those tools. And then it's really how it looks in the end, right? jQuery Mobile has kind of an iOS type look to it. If you go with something like Sencha, tends to be more a native look and feel on each platform. And then you have some of these that they don't even care what it looks like. They just want to get the forms out there, right? So, and that would be like the backbones. And, all right. Okay, so like I said, I'm a firm believer in you can talk all day, but if you don't show me what you're doing, then it doesn't exist. So
I have a colleague of ours says, if it's not in HD, it never happened.
That's right.
So he, obviously, any news or anything that happened prior to HD, he doesn't respect it because it never happened.
Okay, can we switch over to the tablet, please? All right, so tell me, native or JavaScript? Come on. JavaScript, he nailed it. Give it to that guy. So this is something that, you know, these Unreal guys, they made a few games back in the old days. And this was basically a challenge for them, was to, hey, we've got WebGL, we've got JavaScript for a backend. Here, let me actually get, it's actually very quiet for sound, right? All right, so there's sound running as well. But yeah, this is fully interactive. We're running at 60 frames per second, and this is not the latest and greatest Galaxy tab, by the way. This is like one of the, it's one of the 10-inchers, but from like 2011 or whatever. So it's able to handle this without a problem. So as you can see, it's really how much work you're going to put into the textures, which obviously a lot was done here. Now this uses ASM.js, which basically byte compiles the JavaScript down to almost a native layer. Most of you will probably not deal with this type of code or this level. I don't on a regular basis. But I just wanted to show you, for those that say, oh, JavaScript, HTML5, you can't make anything that'll, you know, that'll run or perform. And I mean, you can even run a benchmark to see. So this is running around 30 frames per second on this device.
I'd still want to see the
but
source.
that's a tablet. Let's try a phone. Would it actually run on a phone too? Well, let's see.
I'd still want to see the source code, though. I still don't believe it.
So you guys can grab, this is Epic Citadel. This is the one they did a few years back. This is actually, maybe this is late 2012 when they were working on it. So here it is on the S5. Same thing, it's, I mean, it's running fine. And let's see, I think I can even show the, fine, yep. Let's see if the benchmarks are still the same. And it's still capping out. So this is actually capping out at 30 frames per second. So, so if we could go higher res, even better. Go ahead, sorry, I have a question. Okay, so ASM.js, and you can think of that as assembly language, right? That's kind of the, where it comes from. But yeah, so it's a bytecode compiler for JavaScript. Very cool with what you can do with it. Again, maybe not realistic of what any of us are going to pull off for our first application, but a good example of what you can do.
Not that we're doubting your capabilities.
And I'm not. Very likely, someone in this room is going to create one of the next killer apps. I mean, that's a.
Use
we're
killer
right here.
lightly too. Use the word killer lightly as well. Yeah.
In a good term.
Not literally.
Not literally. All right, excellent. Can we switch back to the? We will definitely show a few more apps as we progress. But.
Okay. Enterprise versus consumer. So basically, we just saw that would be a consumer type application. So differentiating between enterprise and consumer-based application. Now, has anybody actually developed for the enterprise? There we go. Yeah, well, now we have more. So how bad is it to go in and develop for the enterprise? So in my previous life, And even in my current life, I help or I assist or I architect or I put a team together that develops an enterprise. And then it's never an easy process because the biggest thing is having access, gaining access, what you're allowed to touch, what you're not allowed to touch. I can't even get a Wi-Fi signal in any of these enterprises when I go into to assist with development. I literally have to carry my own internet with me in my back pocket because there's so many security measures, or I'd have to call in advance, a week in advance, and I'd have to approve me, and like security clearance. It's that tight. So a key thing, or one of the most prominent things you'd notice when building for enterprise is the security. Access to the application, there's usually multi-layers, encrypting data at rest, encrypting data in transit. There's usually a mobile VPN access that protects where the application sits. There's usually a single sign-on. If it's within a container, you have to go through single sign-on. Within the application itself, there's another layer of security. Access control. With your consumer applications, any and everyone can have access to it. You know where it's at. It's in the Play Store. It's in Google. It's in Amazon. You just go. It's there. Point you to it, and you download it. You don't even have to go to the store. You can literally just send a link over and direct download. Whereas with enterprise applications, it's a little different. And I'll go into it a little later. It's in a separate container. They usually build out their own ecosystem that only employees have access to, and it's so tight that you can work for the same company and not have access to the same applications, depending on your level of security and your roles and responsibilities. Integration. So there's all these acronyms, MBAS and MDM and MAM, and let's come up with a random one today. I just need 3 random letters. Anybody?
That's not random.
HAT, hat. I don't know what that means, but before the end of this presentation, we'll collectively come up with what HAT means, and then we'll all tweet about it, and tomorrow it'll be the new buzzword in technology.
It's going to be trending. It's trending already.
It'll be trending on Twitter. So yeah, gaining access, so a key with when you build for enterprise, you gain access to these back-end systems that they don't want you to gain access to. It's always one of those, you speak to the head of security and said, all right, so in order for us to integrate with the system, we need access to that to the back end. And then he'll say, where does this access go to? It'll go on a device. Who has the device? This guy has the device. How are we securing that device? So there's always these layers, and it always comes down to, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure how secure that'll be. So we've now been introduced to these MBAS solution, mobile backend as a service, where they build out these APIs that you can have access to. You can build your mobile application. It helps for rapid application development, and it gives you access, a secure access. How secure it is, obviously, it depends on the provider, but it gives you access to these back-end systems. Generally, with consumer applications, you don't have access to these back-end systems. I mean, the only security you have would be on your personal data, like Facebook. Every day there's a video on Facebook or YouTube where somebody's saying, hey, have you looked at what's required for you to accept when you download this application? It gains access to your contacts, it gains access to your everything. And then everybody's all scared, and from a technical perspective, it's always been like that. Us app developers know that. It's always the non-technical people that want to sound as technical as possible on these videos, and they go viral, 100 million hits. Hey guys, that's not new. Come on. Design. So I used to say this, and it might not be, I don't know how appropriate it is, but I say enterprise apps are known more for their personality than they are for their looks. So they have a lot of personality, and that's just how it always been. If I looked at that, when Seb showed that application that he just did, everybody was kind of amazed. I mean, we're interested in the technology behind it because it's appealing. I've never seen anyone look at an enterprise application and say, wow, how did you build that? It's functional, and that's it. So we want to be, or maybe you guys will be, the ones that kind of make enterprise app more aesthetically pleasing, make them more fun to look at. Many might not care. I'm pretty sure the execs won't even care as long as it actually gets the job done. But there's a certain level of pleasure that comes along with knowing that, I created a really nice looking application and people like it. Distribution, again, we mentioned they usually sit in a container and they're usually deployed. Where consumer applications, you go directly to the store, you download it, There's no kind of limitations, whereas with enterprise applications, just distributed to you. Whoever manages your MAM, mobile application management system, or your MDM stuff, that person will get the original file and maybe just push it to your device. So you don't necessarily have control over that. Seb had mentioned about making money in enterprise. So there's these bulk licensings that you can take advantage of. I'd tell you, if it was me, if I was out there building applications, I'd build an enterprise application. I'd get a bulk licensing, whatever fee. I might, if it's 99 cents in the App Store, I don't even mind going down to 50 cents for a bulk licensing. I guess the key is service and support. I will provide service, and that's when I'll add all this extra zeros in the back that I can actually make some money off of. But I think that's the key, and I think there's money. I don't even know if I should be selling that or saying that, and I'm being recorded now, so I can't even take it back. But that's important, a key thing to note. And lastly, location, and I mentioned this a couple of times. It's always located in a secure container. There's certain, we have our Knox. I know BlackBerry has Balance. I don't even know what iOS version is.
So there's MDM solutions, right, for the other ones?
Obviously, correct. There's MDM solutions. So that would be the differentiator between consumer and enterprise development. Obviously, there's a lot more when you get deeper in, but from a high level, I think those cover much of the differences.
Okay. So I promised you guys it was simple. And Samsung, this is actually Samsung specific data here. So some things have changed in the recent time frame, and that's, you have the concept of a mobile web app. That's really what we've talked to up until now, just this HTML, get some images, get some web pages, get some JavaScript to hold them together and to make it fun, and you have an app. And basically that gets compiled to an app that sits on your device, basically bundled. Think of just zipping up all those elements and throwing them to the device. Now, that's your mobile web app. There's this, that's actually also called a hybrid app, right? Because it's kind of web and it's kind of native because it's compiled. Then there's a real web app, which is you're just hitting it from your device in a web browser. And you can actually still do some pretty cool stuff there, right? You just don't get some of the offline capabilities and a few of some of these other lower level items like all share, messaging. But then there's this other concept, this convergence concept. So it's not quite a device that can function on its own entirely. So the Tizen watches are a good example, right? Or all these Internet of Things devices that are out there. They need something else. They're inhibited chip-wise to do a specific thing. So they don't have a Wi-Fi card in them, so they can't obviously access the internet that way, but maybe you can get through it through Bluetooth to some host device. So that's where this concept of convergence comes in, where all right, now I guess we're carrying two devices again. We got a phone and a watch, or interconnectivity between apps and device types. So it's not just apps now. Now it's different device types with different features. So you have to kind of have a library that bridges that gap, and that's where the convergence web app libraries come in. So that kind of, consider it the glue between the separate device types that do embedded type functionality. And then you have, on the other side, we called it the TV web app on this, this slides directly from our website. But this is really the embedded device itself. So it has to function on its own. The watch can work without a phone. Your refrigerator does work when it's not connected to your tablet, right? So it still can serve a purpose by itself. And that would be the embedded type of paradigm. So these three now exist, whereas before it was really just the web app and kind of the embedded devices. Now we have this convergence sitting in the middle. And here's a few example primitive types of libraries that you can connect to, okay? Because you don't want to write all the code every time you build an app, right? Never. Use existing libraries. Use the stuff that's out there, because trust me, they're going to do it better than we're going to do it our first try anyway, right? These guys have already tested it. It's been, especially things that are much more popular tend to have more exposure, tend to be better tested, tend to be better libraries. That's really the open source model that really drives most of the development and new technologies in this layer. So look for things that are popular, kind of go with the flow is generally a good idea, especially at the beginning. You'll get frustrated very quickly. Uh-oh, time's up. You'll get frustrated quickly otherwise. Because you'll start using a library, you'll get down this path because, hey, it had this really cool feature that you thought you liked. And then all of a sudden, it won't do something very basic or it crashes all over the place on different types of devices. So be careful going for that forbidden fruit sometimes. Go with what's out there, what's normal, what's kind of mainstream. And Samsung has actually done a nice job of pulling those things together. And that's what we're trying to present to you here are some of the best mainstream apps.
Okay, points to consider when choosing a framework. Initially, we had communities separated from popularity and support, but it kind of goes hand in hand. If there's a good community for it, it means it's a popular and it's well supported. And I think that helps, especially if you're new to this, especially with a lot of these frameworks, they have their little nuances and intricacies that with a very robust support system and popularity, it's easy to actually develop. I think my first experience with, I remember, and I'll tell a quick story, it'll be 1 minute long. So the first job I ever had in technology, I was a web assistant or something like that. I can't remember the title, it's so long ago or not. And then my first day, I didn't know anything about web except that these are web pages .html. That was it. And then the first day after the end of the day, my manager said, I want you to build your first web page. So she gave me a book about HTML or whatever. And I went home and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm in Notepad trying to figure out how to put this together. And I went to the site that I used to visit the most. And then I realized in the tab, there's view and there's source. And I hit view source and I saw everything there. And I literally just copied that. And that was my first website. And that was open source to me at the time. So that's how I built my first. And then since then, I've never written any code from scratch. Because there's a plethora of and a vast number of open source libraries, open source frameworks, anything you need. If you're still building from scratch, I don't even know what to tell you. I guess kudos, I don't know, but it's something I'll never, anything that I build, I used to, especially when I just started, that's how I started getting into programming. And I remember when I used to build these applications in college, I used to always get when I was debugging my code or getting stuck at certain points, I kept thinking, there's no way nobody else would have experienced this. I have to be the first, which made no sense. I mean, there have been programmers before me, and there'll be programmers after me, way better programmers than I am. And then I found Stack Overflow. And ever since then, I literally don't even debug my code. The moment I hit a stopping point, I literally just go to copy whatever error I'm getting, go to Stack Overflow, and that solves my problem. So a good community is key. Framework size. And this was more important back when you had these legacy devices, because you have these robust frameworks that are huge in size, and you try to load them on these older devices, you literally get a crawling application. But now these frameworks come, especially when they're minified, you can get them down to like 1 KB. It's ridiculously small. And there's these robust ones, but I guess with the newer devices that have more resources that they can utilize, you can use these sensor touches that have these large sizes. Functionality is also key because you want to make sure, a lot of these frameworks offer different things. So you want to know exactly what you want out of the framework and then target that particular framework. That way you don't have to reinvent the wheel or actually rewrite anything. So if you know any one of the Ember or Angular does something in particular that you want to utilize, then you go for that and then you utilize that. Flexibility. Obviously, you're modifying the code. You're not taking stock code and just dropping it. Well, a lot of people are. But you know what I mean? For the most part, you want to tweak it so they know, hey, it's your application as opposed to, I don't want the moment they say, this is that. So you're going to customize it to some extent. So you want to make sure that it is flexible and allows for that. And the same thing with templating. You don't want to start from scratch. You want to have a good enough basis where you can start from and then build off of. So that's the key. And then lastly, the licensing and open source. I believe in open source. I am an advocate for it. Does everybody have a GitHub account? Who doesn't have a GitHub account?
We will get you one as part of this lab.
Yeah. GitHub is the key. I mean, there's so much out there. There's so much possibilities. This is where I have this little saying that all my colleagues usually make fun of me. I say, one hand washes the other, both wash the face. The concept is, you submit some stuff, and then this person submits some stuff. If we put them together, the ideas put them together, imagine the possibilities. We can do a lot more when we collaborate. There's a lot out there, and your genius is not identical to mine, but if we put them together, potential is immense.
But you said you didn't write any of your own code, so doesn't that mean that
from
if
scratch,
you help wash his face, I guess that's it.
From scratch. I've modified and I've made a lot of addition, but I've never written from scratch. But yeah, so yeah, that covers points to consider when you're actually choosing these frameworks.
Okay. So hopefully we've sold you a little bit on HTML development. You're all here. You haven't all got up and left yet, so I think we're doing all right there. It's not a perfect story, though, so I don't want you to feel like you've been lied to, and especially on the Android side. Okay, so iOS devices, there's pretty good control over what gets released. The device separation and differences really haven't been much to date. Now they're going to start running into that as of recently. They've come to the big boy phone party now, so it's going to cause a slew of problems. But the browser's still fairly the same, and they make small incremented changes. Excuse me. Most of the other platforms, again, BlackBerry and Microsoft, again, they have pretty good control over how quickly they release stuff. Android is a very different story. So we have Android's been around for a long time, excuse me. So originally, on this device, this is the oldest Android device I have. It's a good old LG 2.1 Android phone. Very impressive, good battery life, but really couldn't do much. Don't expect much from a 200 megahertz processor and I don't know what, 200 pixel display. So we have those. They're still out there. This one's actually still in pretty good condition. And then every year we have new browsers that are coming out, right? So we started with Google Chrome, and then we moved toward the Blink engine that was kind of part of Google Chrome, but so WebKit went its way. Blink's kind of now forked and gone its way. Obviously Safari and the WebKit is going to keep going that way. Thank you, Amazon Fire for Silk. I don't even know where that one came from. Then we have Firefox. That was a great Gecko rendering engine that's going its way. So all these web technologies that just pop up on random devices, okay? And unfortunately, Android made a nice, let's say, a conducive environment for developing, so everyone said, hey, let's throw it on there, and we'll try our own. Or they'll build a device and say, this browser isn't cutting it, so let's modify it for ours, right? So in the end, we get a pretty fragmented story on the browser specifically. And fragment's like the bad word in the Android industry anyway, because we have device fragmentation, there's obviously browser fragmentation, OS fragmentation. A few things, let's just lay it out on the table. So it used to ship with a WebKit browser, right? All Androids were. And the default browser used the web view. Okay, that was simple. And then they started shipping with multiple browsers. On my, half of my tablets have a Google Chrome browser, an internet icon, which I'm not really sure what it launches other than a web view and something. And who knows what the kids just installed last week on, for some third-party app that installed its own browser as well. So you're going to have all kinds of stuff there. So that was fairly simple. Here's an example. The Amazon, okay, so started with Chromium 25. We're at 25. This is what Google Chrome browser uses. They're already at Rev 25. This changes every version of Android. So every time you get a version bump in Android, there's a new web browser with different features than the last one. And maybe they broke stuff, maybe they didn't. So that was based on Chromium, which is not Google Chrome, which is not the same as Silk, which is their new browser rendering engine, which is not the same as their 4.4 Chromium WebView. So here's a device that ships with 3 different browsers on it right off the bat. Which one is your HTML5 app that you just built that runs perfectly in your test lab environment? Which one's it going to run on? Good luck. Okay. Oh, we did it too, guys. Welcome to the party, Samsung. So Galaxy S4 was based on 18. We just upgraded it to 28. I don't know why, but we did. And again, not the same as Google Chrome. The S5, we've done better with it. We're starting to realize, okay, wait a second, we can't be changing the underpinnings. That there's a lot of web apps out there right now. So every time this happens, there's a little issue there. So basically, there's no Android browser. It doesn't exist. There's no, when someone says, oh, just build it for the Android browser. What? There's thousands of them, okay? And you may have 10 on your device right now. Okay. There's good news. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So a really smart guy he works for Intel now, Kenneth Christensen. And they've been working on this for a while. This actually wasn't Intel originally. This was called the Crosswalk project. So what they said is, hey, let's just take the Blink rendering engine that Google's pushing out constantly, right? That's on the tip of the development head. And just standardize it and bundle it as part of these web apps, right? So this becomes your runtime, and then just distribute that out. You can embed it with your app. So it doesn't matter what they have on their device. It's going to run, that small WebKit runtime is bundled closely with your app. So you definitely know what it's going to run with. It's not going to open on some random browser and crash all over the place. So this is from an article that he wrote. So just wanted to bring out that it does conform to the latest web standards. It gets constantly updated. It works across a plethora of devices on the Android side. So any Android device can take this. Now it's starting to be embedded in tools. So like I said, when Intel picked it up and worked it into their XDK, so their IDE, there's 2 acronyms already for you. But so their integrated development environment that they put together utilizes this when it pushes it out. It works great. I've had excellent results with it, and I would strongly urge you. This tool has come to us, so use it, right? Instead of getting beat up when you start distributing your app and it's just breaking and you have no idea why. It should work. This is web standards. I didn't do anything different. Why is it breaking? So, and it reduces that fragmentation. Now, of course, the size of your app's going to go up a little bit, but not noticeably. Trust me, it's worth it. It will render faster too. This is a very good engine. Go ahead. This is a little bit different. So it gets bundled in. So when we get to the building process, which we will actually fairly shortly here, we're wrapping up. When you build, basically you use either something like Cordova, which is kind of the de facto standard right now for building to web apps. And it basically takes those assets, compiles them up, throws a browser engine runtime in with it, and makes a binary for whatever platform you're on. So this gets mixed up into that process. That goes into the build process. So you really, once you know about it, you really don't have to worry about it. Just make sure it's being used as part of your build process.
When you say the sizes, can we define more or less what size?
Sure. So, I mean, a similar app, I've got one right in front of me here, is Now they do have you do have the option not to include that Blink browser. It's basically like an extension that gets bundled with your app. And it will cut down on the size, but let's look at the size under source code here. I think we're talking a meg or two, roughly. So if you have a very small app on an embedded platform, maybe you want to consider not using this. But again, balance it. Weigh it if you want to see. I would err on using it first and seeing if there was an issue with the size, and then back off it if necessary. But yeah, it's not noticeable. A meg or two is pretty small overall. So yes, you'll see. Right now, the Crosswalk project is for Android because it's using that Blink engine, and that's where the fragmentation is so painfully obvious right now. But it's getting pushed to other OSs. Right now, it's not for Windows. It's actually only for Android right now, I believe. But you can see on their development page they're moving toward. Any other questions on that? Okay, we threw together some of the tools that we both used in the past. Actually, I believe you're Aptana, right? Or are you Sublime now?
Sublime.
Okay,
I started
Sublime.
with Aptana.
All right.
I went to Sublime.
So I don't know if you guys have ever dealt with the Emacs versus VI guys. I mean, they'll just throw down. Which one are you? Yes, my man. All right, keep the faith, keep it strong. We're losing that battle. So there tend to be these holy wars on what type of IDE you're going to use. So I choose free because I'm from New England and we are cheap. So I like Aptana because I can give it to anybody. It's got a web browser, server built into it, a bash console. So if I'm on Windows, I can still use Unix and Linux commands and I'm good. And it's, did I say it was free? Yeah, so that's mainly why I use it. And it's got good JavaScript syntax highlighting. So when you're building web apps, one of the things we may have neglected to mention, if you're used to a Java type environment, which I remember seeing a lot of hands, it is tough to break something in Java from a compiler perspective because you can't get past the compiler. Like you have to write 50 lines of code to even get it to do anything. So by the time you've got all your class structures done, and it actually will compile, you're pretty good. The problem with JavaScript is you can just go, let it go. It'll run until it crashes. So it can make it 3/4 of the way through. It can make it to some strange part of your code and then just break at runtime because it's interpreted language. So having a good IDE that's throwing you red blinking error messages saying this code right here is bad, fix this, or it's going to cause problems in the future, even though it seems to work right now. That helps, and it'll save you a lot of time. There's also tools you can run like JSLint that'll go through and parse your code.
It's an amazing feature.
Yep. And one of the ones I actually really like to use is Google's Closure, which does a couple things. It keeps guys like this from stealing your code because it obfuscates it. It also compresses it down in size. Oh, I'm sorry, he doesn't steal it. Yeah, that guy over there somewhere. Because he just modifies it. So it
open source.
That's right, open source. Open source, one of my old bosses used to say. I'm like, no, it's a good thing. So anyway, it actually goes through and it does a couple other cool things by checking actual execution paths and saying, you never actually use this function, so get rid of it. It's never actually reached in your code. So, and it minifies it and compacts it. So again, a good tool to use. That's also included in the lab here. We'll get to it.
The Chrome has some good dev tools too.
Yes, yes. And when you're actively developing, you will find you'll do probably 90% of I do 90% of my work right in the browser.
Same here.
Test it out, build it out. you pop up the console while you're going and throw alerts and console logs in.
Debug.
And debug on the fly. So it's a very active, it's a very progressive development process. But so anyway, that's Aptana. Number 2 on the list, Intel. So this is one I found recently that's really, I've taken a shine to because it's just very easy to use. And we'll use it a lot in this lab just to get you started, get you off the ground, very low barrier to entry. And I think they've made a lot of good design decisions there too. So we'll get into that one a little. I'm not sure if you're more interested in consumer, like the game focus, or if you're more interested in enterprise. Can we have a show of hands? Who wants to build apps to go into Google Play for gamers or for, okay, all right, so a good half. How about for businesses? You're going to go in and build custom apps for businesses, okay? All right.
Businesses, yeah.
And anyone who didn't raise their hand, just...
They're just here.
I'm just here for the T-shirt. That's cool too. All right. So here's a couple game libraries I've used in the past. Definitely follow that tutorial for any of you interested in building a game. This buildnewgames.com WebGL 3GS. So WebGL is basically your GL write directly in JavaScript. It's pretty, I don't know, how do I say this without being, it's geeky. You have to be a nerd, like, or a math whiz.
No
and that's
offense to
fine.
nerds.
No offense to nerds and math whiz.
I think I'm a nerd as well. So.
I was with those guys getting beat up on the playground too. So 3JS wraps it with JavaScript libraries. Mr. Doob, I guess is his name, or is the alias that he goes by. Very, very good library. Makes it a lot easier to make those calls. So that example, you'll get a nice app at the end of it, and I think you'll understand how to do 3D game development very well. And then Panda.js is just a simple library to get started. It uses Cocoon and Pixie as the underlying game engines. Also very good. Very easy and very performant across devices. So that's what I look at. I'm an old assembly programmer. Remember, I started with the Trash 80, and then I moved on to assembly after that. And then once my parents were like, you spent 6 hours making a dot move across the screen? Get outside. Go play. These types of libraries are great. They just put all that behind you. But on the other hand, I still want it to be efficient. Because, so I was saying, these devices keep getting faster. I mean, quad core in your cell phone is almost become a commodity, right? You expect it. Yeah. But there's always a new device coming out that's smaller and a little more underpowered. The watches right now, the wearables are all, I think, in that line. And then once they get faster, something else is going to come out that's smaller and needs more attention to performance. So I like to always, hey, if it can run faster, let's let it run faster, right? So these are good libraries for that. And that's definitely important in the gaming side of things. It needs to run fast and not flicker. For enterprise apps, they actually do care about some of those same things. An app that doesn't give some kind of visual indication that it's crunching or going to do something. My app's frozen, and then they start tapping, right? That's not what you want, the tap syndrome. And then stuff opens up and crashes and deletes, and well, it's because you sat there and just pounded it, and by the time it caught up, bad things happen. So performance is important there too. jQuery Mobile is the one I've used the most in the past. Very good just for building out form-type applications. Very simple. You get a nice app without a lot of work. And it's fairly performant. Some of the other ones are heavier. You go the Sencha route. If you try and build Sencha from scratch,
we don't build from scratch.
You don't build from scratch. You use the architect. Because you're going to be like, what is this? I thought this was supposed to be easy. So start there. It's a good place. And then backend. Oh, sorry, question? Bootstrap. So one of my near and dear friends, Jiming, loves Bootstrap. I was not big on it. when using a framework like that, sooner or later it either becomes too difficult for me to pass my code on to someone else, especially like a junior type developer that looks at it and says, wait a second, I thought JavaScript was easy. I don't understand what is this doing? I need to learn all this other stuff to understand how this works. Okay, if you have a team of really good developers or really close developers, and you all know JavaScript well, yeah, definitely use something like that because it's way easier to maintain. Right? You don't get as much spaghetti code if you go with Bootstrap or Angular, any of those guys. Yes. So the responsive, so basically responsive web is you build it once and then it renders on this, downsizes, and then it
goes with the adaptive
sideways, landscape, portrait. So basically having the same code that adjusts across all these different form factors. That's really responsive design in a nutshell, including our desktops, right?
The whole adaptive UI thing.
Yeah. So yes, absolutely. Not 3JS so much, because that's WebGL. So you generally define a canvas size, and then you have to go with that. So the Epic Citadel example says, all right, let's go with your main screen size. It won't run on something like this because it can't downsize enough. I mean, the castle textures were bigger than the screen size, right? So, however, Panda, Cocoon, those are all definitely follow responsive design patterns. jQuery mobile, yes. Now, sometimes that gets you in trouble. So one of the things about responsive design is the classic example is you have a list on the left and you have your content on the right side if you have a widescreen display. Yeah. And if you go vertical, all of a sudden that content shifts to the top and here. Now, if you have a client that says, no, the buttons need to be on the left. I don't care which way, they need to be on the left. Then now all of a sudden you're fighting with responsive design like these guys. So jQuery mobile does that for you. So if you didn't want it, tough. You're going to have to do some programming to get it to turn it around.
Flexibility comes in as well when you're picking a framework. And then keep in mind, guys, that these are only recommendations. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes to your comfort, what you're comfortable with. You might find one that you like and you're more comfortable kind of maneuvering around. And then you go based off that. This is just our recommendation.
Yeah, and 5 new ones just came out while we were discussing it.
Yeah, definitely.
So good luck keeping up with it. All right. And lastly, the back-end stuff. So when you start dealing with enterprise, the first thing that comes up, right, anywhere you go, once you walk in, is what is your security policies and how do I get to your back-end data? This has been a bane of certainly our existence for a long time here. It's starting to change with MBAS, mobile device, mobile backend as a service, and cloud. It's starting to make that more of a commodity where, all right, where's your REST APIs? Show me your REST APIs and I'll start building. So now you can start leveraging that and you're not building from scratch as much and you're not dealing with that so much. And Node has really become the de facto standard server side because, hey, you guys learned JavaScript for your front end. You can use the same stuff on the back end. Great. It's awesome. I enjoy it. You're going to run into a couple problems. You'll start doing client-side code on the back end and you're like, wait a second, I just made a client call and I'm on a server. Oops, okay, I need to rethink that. There's no REST calls going out from the server. The server is producing the data. So, but it does make it simpler to maintain the code overall with fewer people. And you can understand the back end. You can write some of the back end, right? So you don't have to wait for that to come for you. I mean, I remember, man, integrating with some of the financials, it would be, you could get months before you get an answer back on if they would let you connect.
I'd prefer not to talk about it.
Yeah, those were bad. Those were dark times.
Bring back bad memories.
So again, these are just some simple recommendations we threw together just to get you off the ground. Because again, this is supposed to be an introductory course, and you can definitely ask questions as...
My suggestion would be, and we've done this a lot of times back when we used to do jump starts, You go in and you choose a couple. And think about the functionality that you want to get across within the application. You can build, within a day, you can build an application for all 3 platforms, well, using 3 different frameworks. And at the end of that, you can say, hey, this one was easier for me, and I can move forward with that. So don't go in with the mindset like, I made the decision, and that's it, that's law, this is what I have to follow through with. You can literally, 30 minutes later, decide, hey, I want to try something else. And the flexibility is there. So I'd recommend that you go in and test out a couple. Get your comfort going, and then based off that, you make your decision.
All right, excellent. So we went a little long on the original presentation, but there were some good questions and good feedback here. We're going to take a quick break, and before we do that...
Unless there's any other questions.
Yes.
I think we're good.
This next part is going to be really interactive. So we'll be down there with you. We'll help you do some of the installation, make sure you guys have the tools. Our expectation is to get you to build a few apps, deploy them to your devices, whatever devices you have. We'll at very minimum be able to just at least look at it on an emulator on your machine. So does everyone have a laptop first? Are we all... I think we're good. Okay. Perfect. Well, go ahead, everybody, get up and stretch around a little bit. We're going to hand out the USB keys, and we'll be back in 10.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Okay, so did everyone get one of those handmade USB drives? I burnt 80 of those things, so I appreciate you guys not throwing them in the trash. So there's 16 giggers, and there's what? There's 5 views, so get a little extra to put stuff on. So basically, I built them out for Macs and for PCs, because guess what we have in the audience? Just about a 50-50 split. So I'm a Linux user myself. You see the penguins from time to time, so I'm used to being the ugly stepchild of that one. But I can probably help you out if you do have one of the other OSs. I think there was one Linux guy in here that might need some help there. For the most part, you'll be able to, you can look at the tools and just download them. So one of the good things is we're at the beginning of the lab, and we're at the beginning of the show here, so internet's good. By tomorrow, you know how this works. You're going to try to get online on the internet, and there's going to be nothing left. So now's a good time to be able to download stuff that you need if you do want to be playing around with it. So if everyone grabs a USB drive, and you can go ahead and plug it in. I did do virus scan on it too, so so you should be safe. I'll go over really quick what we look to accomplish here, and you guys can give me a yay or nay back if it's what you want to do. So first of all, I want to get your lab environment set up. So on your machine, so when you leave here, you've got something that you can go build apps with if you haven't been doing it already. So again, for PC and Mac, and I can help people individually as necessary. Both Swally and I will be out there with you to help you on an individual basis as we go as well. Want to explain what's on that USB key first, so you understand what you're looking at, and it's not just, okay, blow it off and put your pictures and stuff on it. We also want to get the Tizen wearable SDK installed on your machines, which is also on there. So we won't get into that a whole lot. I can show you some of the development I've done there based on what your interest is. There are other classes and other sessions that are going on at this conference that you can pick up. And this is supposed to be kind of a primer for that, just to get you started. Then I want to bring you through the different IDEs really quickly. You can kind of try the XDK first, probably. We'll go that route. We'll spend most of our time with that first. We'll show off a couple more of the examples. Now, everything from this point on, we have source code I can show you. The Unreal Engine, I don't have the source for that one, and it would take me a week to go through it with you guys. So we're going to skip that one, but everything else, and there are some good graphic demos in here as well in the source code directory on those keys. I don't think we're going to have time to get into the Node.js side of things. We can go that way because not everyone is interested in the enterprise. I'm thinking you could pull either Swally or I off, and we'll speak to you directly about that. And as far as signing and deploying to the devices, I think it might be out of the scope of this session to get your keys and all that set up. It is pretty fast, especially with Samsung. I got my keys in minutes, but sometimes it can take a day, and evidently it can take up to 3 days. So especially if we all click submit at the same time, let's see how long it takes them to get them back to us. Go ahead. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. We'll go through that. This is going to be very informal, so I'll kind of drive from one of these machines here as we go through it, and we'll switch back and forth between the Mac and the PC so you can see each side. And again, just raise your hand if my USB key is corrupted, or this didn't work, or I already have this and I don't need to do it. Just kind of just wait for us to get through it. And then as any questions come up, we'll address those. So first I wanted to start out with a very simple HTML app, right? That you can all write, you can work on it, you can see it. I'm not big on Hello World because, I mean, really, come on. Hello World, it's like you're going to print out 10 characters of text for me? That doesn't do it. It's got to do something. But it'll still be simple enough that you guys you'll grasp the whole thing and you'll actually have a little fun with it. So I guess let's throw those drives in and get started. Is that okay, first of all? We're good? Is that good expectation? All right.
There you go.
Boo. Okay.
Start throwing nuts.
Oh, look there. I already hear it already. Someone's in the apps. You guys are fast.
Has anybody ever built using our platform before? Show of hands.
Excellent. That's actually a good thing.
So when we leave, we'll have roughly 50 new developers for Samsung. This is amazing.
All right. That's
and
awesome.
I do want to, especially speaking from an enterprise standpoint, and I know Seb had mentioned it, there's some potential building using our wearables. I think it's still innovative, especially for the enterprise. So if you get if something about this lab kind of intrigues you, or you get excited about building, if you target the wearables, I think there's a lot of potential there, and there's a lot of opportunities. So that's just my 2 cents. Might not even be worth 2 cents.
Anybody else need one? Oh, okay. There's plenty.
You're gonna.
If I didn't spend so much time imaging them, I would throw them. You do. Okay. Trying to get an idea for how far I can walk before I. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And these are all the latest tools as of
USB?
The day before yesterday. So. Throw one in here.
There you go.
All right, so first of all, a couple prerequisites. One of the things I really liked and appreciated about the Intel SDK is it really doesn't require much. It's you just kind of plug it in and go. But we're not starting with that one. So we're going to start by getting, I have no more USB sticks. I do have one.
The pointer if you need.
Yeah, I guess we probably don't need the pointer much more. All right, here we go. I'm going to leave that open in case we need it. Okay, so if you look at the structure on the drive, I contemplated a few different ways of putting this together, but I basically broke down what you'd have to install if you're on the Mac, or what you'd have to install if you're on a PC. The wearables IDE has the ties in stuff for, you can basically install for Mac or Windows, and then it has the SDKs for them because the automated downloader was broken for a while. I believe it's been fixed since then, but this also saves you from a 600 meg download times 50. So let's start with, I even tried to number them to make it easier. So the first thing you're going to need, and since half of you already said Java, yes, you can probably just let this one go. But you're going to need the JDK for Aptana and for several of the tools that we'll be using later. So definitely get this guy installed. I love how it says preparing to remove if it's already installed. Don't update, just remove it. The next thing you're going to need is the ADT bundle here. This is on if you're on the Windows side. And then go ahead and you can just go right through and install these 1 through 5 right in order. Feel free to remove any of them, or if you really don't, you already know that you're never going to use some of these tools, go ahead and don't install them. But yeah, go right through the 1 through 5. I have the, go ahead and install the 64-bit version of the web app SDK. I kept the x86 version there because unfortunately right now, our web SDK for Samsung is Windows only. It's using all open source technologies. It'll run on both sides, but for right now, the build's only Windows. So I actually tried in Wine on the Mac, and I couldn't quite bundle it in time, but I think there's a possibility for that if you use the x86 one. And then lastly, having a web server. I always like to have a web server. You'll see one of the issues, and some of these demos will show, is that you'll have cross-site scripting issues if you try and run things as a file in your browser. So if you have a web server, you get around those, and then you can actually view your app like it's really going to look. So choose whatever browser you want. I like Nginx because it's the smallest, fastest one that I could find with the least dependencies. All right, and then there's a few extra recommended tools in here. These are things I use on a daily basis. So when I'm building apps, I need 7-zip is what I use to compress stuff if I'm shipping it around or to uncompress things. Audacity, excellent music library. So if you have to do any kind of conversion, you get an MP3 or somebody sends you a WAV file. You're like, I'm not putting a WAV file in my mobile app that's 5 megs when it could be 20K. Or you want to convert. So MP3, it's it used to be license inhibited. It's not. But there's already MP4s out and OGG Vorbis, which actually have better compression rates and higher fidelity for both of those formats. OGG also has an added advantage of being very low CPU intensive for decoding. So I highly recommend that, and you'll see it in a lot of mobile apps. So you can use that for your conversions. Flash Win IE, I don't know why something installed Flash, so I just threw it on here so you had it. And then GIMP, my favorite. I love that thing. Anytime I need to edit an image or, and fidelity and high quality is important, you can use GIMP. It's, again, all free. If you're used to Photoshop or you already have it installed, then you're not going to be interested. But it is nice. And again, it's for the little things, right? You're trying to create an icon. How often do you have to create an ICO file? Not very often, but if you have a tool that can do it, that you don't have to spend an hour trying to find something, works great. So, and by the way, all those are cross-platform. So if you go into the Mac directory, for those of you on the Macs, so JDK, when I was doing my testing, evidently this Java for OS X, I was required to install, even after I installed the JDK. The latest JDK. It was not updated. I don't know, whatever the case may be. That's there for you. Google Chrome. Please, everybody, please install Google Chrome. I beg of you. Just let's all be working with the same browser here. I love it. I mean, it's. I'm also a Firefox guy at times because I like how it renders things. But if it doesn't render in Google, I go to Firefox. But if you use it, it'll make your web development life and definitely your Android development life much easier because it's very similar to what you have on those devices.
It's what I use for my personal development as well. And the developer tools actually debug, and we mentioned it in the earlier part of the session. It's actually key and it's important, especially me coming from a .NET background and having the ability to step through my code. The Google Chrome, the dev tools offer that capabilities using JavaScript. So if you've never debugged or actually step through code in JavaScript, that option is available to you. That functionality is as well. So it's a key. I'd recommend it.
So on Macs only, you're also going to have to install the Android file transfer DMG here. So that basically lets you, somebody got in some argument a long time ago and said, you can't include this, and Steve Jobs said, okay, fine. And anyway, whatever, you got to install it separately, but that'll get your communication going between your Android device and your Mac. And you'll like that too if you want to transfer or sideload things to your Android device. So, all right. And then the Studio bundle is for the to be able to grab emulators if you want. Let me just say, I hate emulators. I don't use them. I work for Samsung, so I guess I can get the phone. But even before then, I don't want to mess with an emulator for a few reasons. One of the things, we brought it up, these devices are quad cores. My laptop is only a dual core half of the time. So my device is actually technically has better specs, and I have to emulate it on my laptop that's already hurting? No, okay, sorry. One time, you'll build one app, and it'll go south because you'll spend 10 hours trying to debug something on the emulator, and you'll realize this is a bug in the emulator. This doesn't even exist on the device, and I wasted my life. I can't get those hours back. So I strongly recommend don't use the emulators. But if you don't have the device, or for simplicity's sake, teach their own. So they're there for you if you need them. And then a few extra recommended things here. Again, no sleep. I hate every time I close the top of the MacBook and it goes to sleep. I mean, come on, really? I just had to close it for a second. Don't shut down. I was downloading something and you turned the Wi-Fi off and now it's broken. So just I found that to be a very nice little app. And again, the same. GitHub as well. So I know not everyone was on GitHub here. Maybe not everyone's even heard of it. So do you want to explain it so I don't go hoarse?
Is there anyone who doesn't have a GitHub account? Is there anyone who does not know what GitHub is?
That's okay to raise your hand. I mean, it's source control.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's a repository that it actually it gives you ability to kind of house data or house resources, and it gives interactions between, so you can check out a repository or monitor a repository, and like he said, you can monitor activity. You can see who has access to the device, who is modified, and then there's syncs. So you can actually take that. We have a source code. We can take that source code and see what modifications were made. We can sync it to our current system, and that way you can keep track of exactly what's going on with your with your online resources.
So one of the other cool things about GitHub, and I need to drink my own medicine on this one. So we're fairly new to Samsung. We left a previous company that we also worked together at. And during that transition, I was, you give up your old laptop when you leave your old company, and there's probably some cool stuff that you developed on there that surely you'll get it off. Nope. Now I can't find it. I don't know where it is. So because I didn't put it in some central code repository somewhere, it's gone. And I have probably 100 computers at my house if you counted them all and added them all up. And I looked through every single one. It's nowhere, and I could have sworn it was somewhere. So long story short, if you always have your stuff in a repository, and I know you don't always, you're working on the brand new greatest thing since sliced bread, you don't really want to put it out in the public right off the bat. You can get a private repository at GitHub. Not everything's visible to everyone unless you want it to be. But go that route and discipline yourself to work that way. Because GitHub, it was meant to work offline, right? So you sync, you make your changes, and so you can be developing on the airplane or wherever, and then you sync it back. But if you can discipline yourself to do that, it's really worth it in the long run. And then you can see any incremental changes and obviously go back.
You can revert back to older working code as well.
And,
so it does have its benefits.
It does. And I'm an old SVN guy. Actually, I really liked CVS back in the old days. It was simple. I understood it a little better than GitHub. Thanks, Linus. He thought it was better to just make it very complicated. However, GitHub tools help make Git a little less intimidating to get started using. It's actually pretty simple, I think, now.
And there's a lot of resources on there, especially in development. And me being not the guy that develops from scratch, there's literally everything you need out there from a development standpoint. Some of the guys, I remember one of our colleagues said a lot of the functionality that you see in Facebook, you can literally gain access to that source code and build off of that. It's sitting on GitHub. Any other new technology that you've become familiar with or you see within applications that you like, those there's usually open source code on GitHub sitting, waiting for you to actually take advantage of it. So I recommend it. If you don't want to put stuff up there, it's okay to pull stuff and kind of use it. It's open source. There's some licensing behind it. But yeah, you should be fine.
Yeah, just remember, you run the danger as soon as you don't save it that you're going to lose it. I never thought I would. I figured I had backups and backups and backups, but nope.
And with the actual app, there's a sync capability. So the moment you make some modification, you can sync both locally and online, which is a cool feature.
Yep. And it's great for collaboration, too, if you're working with other people. So.
Yeah, sure.
Uh-oh, this thinks it needs to download something. Okay. So is anyone getting stuck on the installation process anywhere? We have internet here, and I think it's working pretty good. I purposely didn't install most things, so I'd be stuck where you guys are. So I didn't get ahead and say, hey, look at this. Isn't this awesome? You're like, no, it's not. Go ahead. This one here? Okay, so the ADT bundle, you just unzip it somewhere. So I like to put everything in a similar place. What does that mean, Seb, you ask? Well, let me show you. Once I can figure out this left mouse click. Okay. So if you go, I like develop, right? So I'll dump all my stuff in one directory because then I can find that directory and then I can just move that directory if necessary, right, or back it up. One of the other issues, so for this one in particular, on Windows, you've got a file name size limit of, I think it's 255 characters. So that includes the directories. So if you go into program files, you can't install several of the files. So put it in C develop or C something, your name. Anyway, but ADT just needs to, yep, just unzip them. And that's what mine looks like right now. So I would assume to see something about like that directory structure when you're done. And would have probably helped if I had told you to put everything in the same directory, but. So I'm going to fire up Aptana as soon as it's done. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to some of the demos too so you guys can see it. But sure. Yes. Yes.
So is what you're creating generally a platform-specific thing that needs to run on a particular platform? Or I was under the impression that HTML5 was really great because you can get the content on all the things.
So yeah, let me back up that statement a little bit. So I generally do, and I think Swali and I both said it, we do most of our development in the browser, like in Google on my desktop. I'll do 90% of my work there, probably 99, but I want to see it on the device early. So I go with the agile testing method, agile building methodologies as well. So build often, because I want to know, hey, I just tried this new 3JS library with 3D acceleration, and I'm going to try it on my, oh, it's horrible on this device. I wish I'd known that a month ago when I started, right? It works great on the browser. Yeah. So try early, right? As soon as you try a new library, see how it works on the device. The more popular libraries tend to make more small incremental changes. tend not to break as much. Smaller libraries offer the cooler features often, but tend to have less testing across devices.
Correct. Seeing it on the device would be the most ideal, because I've seen scenarios where it runs perfectly on an emulator. You throw it on a device, you get a white screen, or it runs perfectly using Chrome, and then you throw it on a device, and then opposite, it doesn't work on those, and then you throw it on a device, it works perfectly. Yeah. Correct. Correct. Exactly. Kind of an agile approach to developing. I was in India and I did a presentation around the same thing, HTML5, and this developer met me afterwards and he says, "Hey, my application isn't working on the device." He had me downloaded it, and I asked him, "Did you ever test it on a device?" He never tested it on a device. He did all his development on an emulator, and he looked at it, then it worked fine. He submitted it to the App Store, never tested it. So there could be a lot of issues that can arise between that process. Go ahead.
You mentioned developing with Chrome. Do you mean that you're writing code in
Aptana, correct.
Correct. Yeah. But sometimes we're modifying the code in Chrome, right? So you run it. Yep.
Does that feedback in?
Unfortunately, it doesn't. That's one of the things the first time I ever used it, I'm like, oh, cool, is this going back into my... No, it doesn't. Yeah, as soon as you close the browser, it's gone, whatever changes you made. So what he's getting at is, one of the cool things about Chrome is you can run your app, but then you can modify it real time while the app's running in your browser.
Correct.
Make changes to it, check debug logs, and we'll show a little bit of that. However, none of those changes persist back to your source.
Correct.
I'm sure there's an extension by now that'll do that, but... Okay, so again, going back to the structure, once you have the basic stuff installed under Mac or PC, most of the value, I think, in this lab you're going to find in the source code. So I've put together 4, kind of maybe 5, I guess, 5 apps in all. Let's go through this soundboard app first. So this was an app I created. I'm kind of proud of it. I created it a long time ago as just an example app that would run on any device. I just wanted something that didn't use any libraries, was could stand on its own. And the guys that I worked with were always having conference calls and were always looking for, hey, I need to play this cool soundbite right now. And if you're on the conference call, it's usually too late by the time you can find it on your machine. So hey, let's have the soundboard app that's ready at all times to light it up. So here's what the code might look like, and I'm actually just going to browse this in Explorer so you can see the basic structure. So basically, images. I've got a little loading. Okay, awesome, and a sound picture. All right, little speaker. Okay. So you start, this is generally how an app starts, right? You're thinking, okay, I've got a couple pictures of what I found, what I want to build from Google. Oh, really, Word? I didn't see that coming. Hang on. How about we open with Notepad? There we go. All right.
And
I'm going to open this in Aptana, since I installed Aptana, and that's what it looks like in a Notepad in Windows. And fine, sure, that's good. Again, I usually put it in develop instead. So Aptana asks for a workspace where it's going to put all your projects. I don't know why this thing's having such trouble with the mouse right now, but
Epic sax.
They're loading the app. I hear it. So, yeah, now you're just like, what are you?
Have you guys seen that YouTube clip? I think it's like 24 hours long. The epic sax guy.
This poor sax guy. He's a good sax player, and they just caught like 5 seconds of him just doing his little thing, and like 20 hours straight of it.
They turned it into a 20-hour video on YouTube.
And you watched the whole thing, didn't you, to make
the
sure it
whole
was
thing.
20 hours? Okay, so here's kind of the basic look when you fire up Aptana. So I'm in Windows, but see, this makes me happy. I've got my little terminal console. I can do ls-l, right? Okay, I feel at home. It also has, let's change the default view and import a project. So I'll import that soundboard app. Okay, so I right-click in the Project Explorer space over here and do import. There's 12 ways to get to everything in Windows, right? So that's how I did it there. But you can import a project directly from Git, which is kind of cool as well, right? And then it keeps it in sync. I do that often. Or we can just do a general. And I'm just going to do general. I think I can do existing projects because I think there's a .project file. So I'm going to go, OK, browse. And I'm going to browse to that
developer.
I'm just going to get it right off the drive. I don't know why this is doing a right click every time I click, but OK. So soundboard app. So let's go for that first one. Stage 1, simple. All right. Finish. OK, look at that little soundboard app over here. All right. So let's see what this looks like when I do. Hey, that looks like HTML, not like a Word document. OK, so here's HTML. This is it. Everyone in here could write this. I'll explain it very quickly. First line says, this is an HTML5 document. Why did they not put HTML5 in it? I don't know. Ask the W3C consortium. Why did they make you put HTML again afterwards? I don't know. We just do it. It's simple, though, right? It's not that much. You can really get away with not even putting these there, and it'll still run and compile. We're just trying to be nice to every browser, make sure everything reads it correctly. Basically, every HTML file has a head and a body. Originally, the concept was head would be where you'd put all the things that you wouldn't see in your app. So loading your style sheets and loading your JavaScript was always done in the head. And then the body is where you'd put what you could see. This has changed time and time again, and best practices change weekly on where to put the stuff. In the end, it doesn't really matter. They're gonna render it at the same speed, I've found, no matter where you put stuff. So keep it simple. Your title always goes in the head. And then again, you're just wrapping these tags. Now you notice how I have color, syntax color highlighting here. I've got little warnings over here, which are just saying, OK, you shouldn't use U anymore. We use CSS for this now. OK, I wrote this a little while ago. So, but this is still all valid HTML. Pre just means it's pre-formatted text, so don't try to if I do an enter or a carriage return, I want you to move to the next line. Otherwise, HTML will just go render left to right, top to bottom until it runs out of space, and then it'll go to the next, like a typewriter. Okay, so I'm telling it, I want you to kind of look like how I'm building it. So first vision was to have something on the top, a couple buttons. And that's all this is doing. It's saying, give me button 1, button 2, button 3, button 4, and a button at the top that has the title. And then at the bottom, this is actually an invisible control, so it's an audio control. And I'm just saying, hey, I want an audio element in my HTML. And then I'm wrapping it with a div. And a div just allows me to do basically think of it as it's just a wrapper. You're putting a blanket around this whole thing that you can say, you know, it's kind of like putting into the bag, right? So I've got, here's my head, here's this, and here's the audio tag, and it's in this div. And then I can move it around, right? If I want to move it to another page, if I want to hide it, if I want to show it, you can, if you have it wrapped in an element, any element in HTML cascades from the CSS, which means if you hide something, anything underneath it or inside of it really will be hidden. Okay, so this is how you control visibility in HTML.
You can preset the look of each element within that div tag in your CSS as well, so you have that control over everything.
So if I don't want to change each of these buttons individually or all the buttons, right, I can just change it on the div and it'll wrap down to those buttons as necessary. All right, so something very simple. Okay. let's take a look at what it looks like. So I installed Nginx on this guy. Welcome to Nginx. Great. Okay, let's go to source code. So I just put that source code directory in var www on Nginx, and you're able to view this. I did skip one little step there, and I will show you that step. Let's see where Nginx is actually running here on this machine. Okay, so I put Nginx in here, and basically all you have to do is go into your conf directory on Nginx and open up Nginx, and this is the same on Mac as well. For some reason, these guys thought that they're going to be really cool and really efficient, and they're not going to put this line in or even put it in and comment it out. So anytime you install a web server, you expect it to show a directory listing if you go to the directory and there's nothing, there's no index.html file there. So Nginx gives you an error and says, no, 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 there's nothing there. To be secure, I'm not going to serve up a directory listing. So you have to put auto index on to get it to show. And that's all that is. So once you do that, you can change the port if you want it to run on 8080, so you don't need root on Macs. I think it does that by default. Windows is a little less secure, so they let you run on 80. All right, so anyway, once you fire that up, now again, you can also look at this code. If I go into source, this is the wrong source code. Let me go to the D drive, sorry. If you go to the source code and you actually just run this file, I can run this in Google Chrome. All right, so I can see it in Chrome right now. If you can see up on top, it's accessing it as a file. That's going to be okay for this demo. For some of the other demos, it won't be, and I'll show you why quickly. But so the soundboard app, you can just browse to it if you want. If you don't want to set up Nginx and get it running. So let's go through that quickly. So here we go. Button, 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 and a hidden audio element at the bottom that you can't see. Pretty simple. All right, we can do this. This is generally how an app kind of flows. You're like, all right, I'm going to lay it out. I've got my element. It doesn't do anything yet. All right, let's stub it out. I'm going to actually close this project. Just get it out of the way, and let's import the next one. Again, I'm just trying to do this to show you kind of how an application might flow over time. Source code, back to this guy. All right, stage 2. Let's add some style to it. It's going to make me rename it.
There's also built-in functionality in Chrome that allows you to have predefined dimensions for different devices. So if you're targeting different a tablet, or you're targeting a device, you can those predefined dimensions exist within the Chrome developer tools. That'll give you a kind of a replica of how it would appear on the actual device as well.
Sorry guys, I'm actually going to delete the project each time because it tries to put it in the same namespace. It's like, why did you do that? It thinks so. All right, we'll do that just because it's easier. Okay, here's the second one. So now, now we've added some style. This is CSS, okay? And I'm putting it all in one file because that's generally how you start when you're rapidly developing something. You're not going to have all the best practices set up. You're going to embed your CSS in your HTML. So this is what CSS looks like, all the stuff inside this style. And basically what you're saying, it's got a similar syntax. You have these curly braces around all the items. Right? This is a pretty simple text line. I want it to be centered. I want Verdana to be the font family, size, background colors. And by putting dot in front of head, I'm saying everything in head needs to follow this. Everything in body needs to follow this. Actually, I think this is an error on head. This can just be. All right. Same thing with button and image. So I'm making those global for all of those. Okay. So any button is going to have. It's going to be padded on the left a little bit, which means it's going to move it over a little bit. Text align to the left, giving it a height of 75 pixels and 90% width. okay? And then otherwise, now I've added some fun stuff down here too. So I've added a little JavaScript. I'm going to stub it out. Pause music, play music, okay? This is what JavaScript looks like. We function. Oh, that wasn't me. I don't think. Function. Okay, it worked that time. And you basically, here's my function that I'm calling, and here's any parameters are inside it. And alert is what it's gonna print out for me here. So, any guesses what happens when my pause gets called? Anyone who hasn't seen much JavaScript before, go ahead, raise your hand. Tell me what it's going to do. When I click on my pause, or when I call my pause, what does it look like it's going to kick out? It's going to pop up an alert that says, there we go, excellent. How about my play? So I'm going to say my play, and I'm going to send it a file name, and then it's going to basically print it out, and then substitute this variable my file for any time inside that function for that value. Okay, so it's going to say which file it's playing. Fairly simple. All right. We attach these to HTML elements by on-click events. Very simple. This was the standard way to do it back in the old days. Now we can do on all kinds of events, right? But this is again trying to be very simple. So you click the first button, if you click essential, you're basically going to call my pause, and you click any of these guys, and it's going to play each of these different songs, okay? Well, it's going to send them to that function. Right now, all that function does is stub out. So it's fairly simple. All right? There's the end of it. So our little app is starting to grow. All right? It's getting a little bigger. We can see what it does here very quickly. Go back to Chrome. All right, we'll look at the Samsung Soundboard app. Let's say this second one. Oh, I actually deleted the little project off. That's awesome. All right, so now it's starting to look a little more like an app, okay? I've got some images in there from the CSS. I've got these buttons I can click. Hey, look at that. Pausing music, playing this, playing metal, playing this. Perfect, okay? Then I have this little footer bar on the bottom. All right, it's starting to look like an app. Now, this will scale because I kept it simple. It'll scale on all kinds of devices, anything we want to push it to, all the way down to our, even our Tizen devices. But it still doesn't really do much. Okay, we haven't had to interact with that audio element. Okay, we just stubbed out those functions. Let's take a look at the next one really quick here. Adding functionality. And let's see if I can, that's going to look horrible if I do that. So what I might do to try to speed this up a little bit is I'm just going to drag that file over because that's really the only one that changed there.
And if you notice, even with a simple modification of the CSS, you can change the entire look of the application. Mm-hmm. So I know a lot of people create multiple templates and multiple CSS, and then they can literally just call them interchangeably. That way you can change the look of an application. For specific, for example, if you want a Halloween theme version of your application, you could literally just create a template and just access it on that particular day, and then go back to your normal the following day. So it gives a lot of flexibility. You can modify and change the look of the application, and the functionality will remain the same by using CSS.
Okay, so here's the next on the updated index. Okay, so now I've added some logging. So I have a log function. Now I have pause actually interacting with this element. So you get the element in JavaScript. JavaScript is still kind of a bolt-on to HTML. So what I'm doing is I'm going to my document, I'm getting this element from HTML, which was called my media, because that's what that audio element was called, and then I can act on it. Once I get it, I set it as a variable, my m, okay, and then I can set the autoplay to false, pause it, okay, and then here when I actually play, we get the element, all right, set the source of the element. Load is a function that I can call on any audio element, and play is another function I can call on any audio element. Okay? So this is how we interact with those elements on the page from JavaScript. Okay? Now this works if it's an extension. This works if this is GPS or camera functions, all the same thing. They're going to look just like this, where you're defining a, an object gets set up. In this case, it's a media object, right? Because everything in JavaScript is an object. And then we act on it, set some properties of it, fire off some methods on it, and we're done. Okay? So lastly, I've still actually just got one, for the most part, one giant file. So in the end, right, before you pass this off, because I wouldn't want to give this to graphic designers, right? You give this code to graphic designers and it's not coming back functional, okay? If I split off my CSS, I can give it to them. Here you guys go, have fun, render these styles the way you want, leave my JavaScript alone. So you break this stuff out, because this stuff here, this is bad. See, because look at what I'm doing to it just by clicking and dragging. I have an action now instead of a function and pause view. So, get this stuff out, spread it out into separate files, which we do in the last version here. Oops. So by the time you get to stage 5, we've got a favorite icon here. We've got an index that's separate. We have a README. Put a README in there, right? Say, hey, here's what this is. Here's the author. Here's my GitHub where you can grab this thing. Any requirements. Throw some disclaimer in there. Not that anyone really reads it, but it just makes it feel better. It makes it feel like a real app, right? You've got all the copyrights and stuff. Spread out your scripts generally into one directory. So this is actually CSS, but it's still script. Generally, you put your JavaScript in there. All your media elements, here's the 4 media elements that we grabbed, and then your images in a different directory, okay? So in the end, this app looks something like this, and I think I heard it playing a few times. So I can click on these guys, and I should have some sound. Not much sound, but a little bit. If you click on it while it's already playing, it'll restart. If you click on the top button, it'll pause. So now we have this fairly simple app, but won't crash no matter how many times I click stuff or how fast I click it. It's simple, right? We didn't require any other libraries. We didn't go with hardware acceleration. We just tried to keep it very simple. So by doing so, this app, I haven't found, there we go, he's got more volume than I do. So you can actually run this as is. So we have a PC here. We can push it out. Let's go into the XDK here, and we can take a look at what it might look like on a device. I think I have it. Let's see if I have it, at least a modified version on here.
Can you put it for your wearable?
Let's see.
If you get a chance, check out the YouTube
Yeah, do
video.
find that. It's a little Easter egg for you.
Epic Sax guy.
Epic Sax. Okay. So that's kind of a quick overview of maybe how an app will progress over time. You can definitely fire it up on your laptop or deploy it to a device. What I'm going to do is fire up the Intel XDK so we can see what it might look like on a device. Anyone who's installed this, I believe there's a Linux version of the XDK as well. So you can install it on pretty much anything under the sun. It fires up. It looks a little similar where we have like the project on the left. What I'm going to do is actually start with a blank project. I never trust import because I never know what other stuff they're going to throw in. So basically, all you have to do to get started with this, hang on, let me just fire it up one more time from the beginning. So once you install it, it asks for a username and password, so you can just register with them. They don't spam you. I haven't gotten spammed yet for it. If you don't trust it, just put somebody else's username. I mean, actually, what I originally tried to do was just get you all to use the Samsung, like some generic one, but it's kind of in their licenses that you don't do that. So I decided not to, but you can just use some generic username if you want. So I'm just going to go in. I think it's developer@samsung.com, which is not my email address.
For the web developers in the audience, what IDE or what do you guys use to develop now? Dreamweaver.
Dreamweaver, all right.
So that's what I use, yeah. Dreamweaver and Sublime. Go ahead.
So one of the challenges I have with JavaScript is because it's so loosely typed. So where do you find, so you have a media player on here. You know it's got a series of functions. JavaScript doesn't know anything about it. So where do you go for that level of documentation? Are you looking at the Java?
So for the media player itself, so okay, if you go to developer, here, that's actually a good question that we definitely need to address. So if you say you go to developer.samsung.com.
That is our developer site, by the way.
Yes, bookmark that site. This site is changing rapidly, and we're making a lot of updates to it. But as you can see here, we have what you're really talking about is an API. I want the API reference. What am I going to call to make that, to use the media elements on the device instead of make my own? Sure.
JavaScript as a bridge.
Yep. So what you do, let's get an example of something that I know will work from the web SDK side. Okay, here we go. So our API reference, here's the Sam Websung API. Okay. It's okay, you can play it. It's a safe place to play it. Trust me, I've dealt with it. All right, so here's the APIs. So say the alarm API, you want to take a look at this guy. What kind of stuff can you call from JavaScript on your phone? So they're all listed here. And all right, almost always you'll find a quick example of it. So they basically will give you, all right, here's how it's built out. Here's all the functions. This is generally automatically built from the actual file itself, or from the class itself, kind of like Java docs. And I always scroll down, show me a code example first, and then I'll go back and look at the API itself. But okay, is this kind of what I want? All right, set a new alarm. You basically, so it's this web APIs that you're going to call. And then you're just using a simple set of giving a date object to set the alarm absolute. Okay, fine. And then application control for this guy to actually do it, to give you access, because alarm's kind of a secure asset, right? You don't want to have any app just, oh, I'm just going to randomly set your alarm for you every morning. How would you like that? And then add that object to the DOM.
Bless you.
Bless you, yes. And then it just reports on it. Okay, so all right, this does what I want if I wanted to set an alarm. Okay, if there was something you were talking more media focus. So how about something under Bluetooth, right? Maybe you want to make it pair before it plays, right? So you'd look under this API, say, all right, let's get the default adapter. All right, follow through that, and then call your audio calls. If you're asking for the generic things that aren't just Samsung, then go to w3c.org and all.
I think you answered the question. I was trying to make it easier, because if I'm dealing in Java and I have an object, I type a dot, it's going to tell me all the
Yes.
But in JavaScript, they don't have that.
Exactly. It's not, you don't get it for free in the IDE that you do in Java because it doesn't know what you're going to use. And JavaScript actually, a very small set of functions that it'll do by itself, right? Without libraries, it's kind of just a blank slate. So, so yeah, look for the APIs. I mean, even there, it took me a few clicks to find it. I will bubble that up. And then definitely look at the examples. So that's why I tried to give you a few examples right off the bat. Okay, so here's the Intel XDK, how it starts up. I was pretty sure I said a blank project, but it gave me some junk here to start with. Okay, that's fine. So what we'll do is let's pull our app in here. All right, so in this www directory, I'm going to actually just kind of make this a little smaller. So in the spirit of what Swale likes to do and not start from scratch, give me a blank project and then I'll bring all my stuff in and we'll see how it works. So we'll go to source code and grab that latest soundboard app. All right, so all this stuff. And again, remember I said and I meant it. You just grab it and copy it. And let's see if it's, I know on the Mac, which I was playing with earlier, it just let me do it. So I want to dump everything in this www directory. Let's see if it'll just let me. Right click. Oh, you won't let me just paste it? Fine. Then I'll show it in Explorer and paste it. How about that? Copy and replace. All right, so I obviously have some extra code in here now, but I overwrote some of the code that they had. So, but now if I go back in and refresh, I should see my stuff, and I do. There's my index. Okay, let's go right to emulate this thing. This is one of the things I appreciated about the Intel XDK right off the bat is it just goes as far as emulation's concerned. This is actually using it's like a Ripple, but it's more than just a browser embedded page, right? Because you can do some other cool stuff with it. You can pop it out, you can bug track it here, and you could do this in a browser, just the bug part. Let's test it. So when you install this, there's an app that you can install on your device that lets you push it to the device without having to build it, sign it, and sideload it over. Okay, it's called this app preview. It's in the on the drive here, which you can either sideload or just go grab it in Google Play for your device. And basically, it'll let you push it over to the device without having to go out and sign it, and do it in real time, which is nice. Where's the other phone?
You threw it in the bag.
Oh, did I? Oh, that's right.
Div
I divved it. I divved it. All right, so let's show this guy. All right, so can we switch to the tablet on the overhead? Okay. So
we're not seeing it.
Let's get, all right, we're here. So this app preview basically gets installed, and I have to log in on this side. Developers.
I think you spelled it wrong.
I did. This one hasn't learned my fat fingers yet. How are we doing on time? I know we got to be getting, got a half hour, so okay.
Yeah.
We'll push this through. Okay, so that's running there. And I'm going to grab a USB cord to hook it up. So if you've pushed apps to your device before, you generally have to put your device in USB debugging mode. Has everyone familiar with that on the Android side? Okay. It's kind of fun the first time you do it. You're like, really? You're going to make me click that 7 times? And then I'll really be a real hacker.
Quick demo on it so I can...
Oh, this is going to stink because I can't... All right, well, you're going to, I guess, have to trust me for this part then. Could we go back to the laptop for a second, please? Sorry, we're going to be probably switching back and forth here for a bit. Okay, so I get to actually test it on the device here. Okay. All right, then you log back in on the device. So you can do it this route, okay? And again, since we're getting a little bit pressed for time here, I'm going to move along quickly. Or you can actually just sign it over here. You can go to build, all right? Let's take a quick look at this build process. So I can build Crosswalk for Android. That's what we were talking about before, which is that it'll run on everything. Android using the latest and greatest WebKit. You can just do a standard Android hybrid, which doesn't use that, which is basically going to rely on whichever browser WebKit presents to you. iOS, Windows 8 right off the bat. They call these the legacy ones below, which are, I'm not really sure why Tizen is under that, because they do have a Crosswalk extension for Tizen already. Amazon, Nook, so it's pretty much, it's all here. Or you could build it as a web app, which is basically just a web page that you're going to distribute, okay? So you have all the options here right off the bat. Say I'm going to build it as a Crosswalk, right? So it zips it, it uploads it, and then it emails you. So this is kind of nice, right? So you don't have to install any of the build tools, any of the Cordova stuff, which is included on that USB drive, but it's a process to get it all set up. So if you go this way, which you'll want to right off the bat, you just go ahead, build it. I'm going to build it for Crosswalk. And we can actually, I think I have the APKs on your drives. So there's the app preview. Here's the HexGL app, which I haven't gotten to show you guys yet, but I will sideload it right now and show you what it looks like. Oh, actually, it's on this guy. Okay, so it takes a little while to build, and then it's going to upload it, build it on their servers, which is kind of nice. So you don't have to deal with even signing keys and stuff, right? It handles it, because it's going to go through that Intel or the email and password that you gave it to build your stuff off of, which is fine. You can submit stuff to the store that it gives you, that it kicks back. So you can go right through and send it right to Google Play after this. So this is going to send you 2 APKs, one for simulator and one for your device. It's going to look, the zip file they send you is going to look just like this. So there's here's a HexGL app. Can we scooch over to the tablet again? Okay. So this app, this is going to take a little while. I think it's having trouble with the internet still. Uh-oh, here we go. Let's try this again.
It's not a good demo if it doesn't fail once.
It's got to fail the first time. First time. Okay. So this is an open source. So all the source code for this app is in here under the HexGL, I think it's the number 4 demo. So you can look at all the code that this is actually built from. But let's take a look here. Let's turn the quality down just a teeny. Let's leave it on high. That's fine. Okay. So this is using 3GS. And as you can see, it's actually doing this little hex type filter over everything. It's kind of a fun little effect. But this is running in pretty good speed as and I'm horrible at this game, by the way, as a JavaScript app, okay? So same thing. This is just those 3 things, guys. JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, right? If I want to change the colors of any of the text here, I can just change it in CSS and rerun it, and we're good to go. All right, I'm just going to end this. Go. No. Come on, you're done. All right, almost done. And okay, excellent. All right, so you can see how that app gets out there. Now, I didn't give it a specific icon, so you just get this basic Cordova / PhoneGap plugin icon for it.
And that debunks the whole notion that you can't build really nice-looking applications with HTML5. Because a lot of the times, especially from an enterprise standpoint, I get these enterprise developers or developers who now are focusing on enterprise, especially from a mobile standpoint, say, hey, we choose not to go HTML5 because I don't think it'll look native or it won't have the great UI or graphics. So these applications kind of show that, yo, it is possible as long as you dedicate the time and effort and you utilize some of these frameworks.
So I guess can we go back to the laptop for a moment? All right, so basic rule of thumb, you develop your code. That's what I like how this is organized. You emulate it, okay, fine, if that's what you want to call it. I'm looking at it on a browser to make sure it looks like what I want it to. Play around with landscaping. I can test it by pushing it to the device directly. I'm sorry, the internet seems to not be cooperating with me to get this over. Debug, if it's broken, okay? You want to watch things at a low level. Profile. This is my favorite part of the Android toolkit, actually, because it lets you look at where the performance barriers are with your app. Obviously, there's not really going to be any for this soundboard app, but for some of the other stuff, you're going to run into it quickly. And this, I guess this is, I could fire it up on my other laptop, but I think we're getting close to the end of time here. Go ahead.
No, I also wanted to add, because of the asynchronous nature of JavaScript, I would recommend or suggest using alerts in your debugging, because they can fire at any time. So that wouldn't be the most ideal situation when you're actually debugging your application.
So let's, while we're still here, let's building it. Let me run through these other demos really quick for you so you can just see the code, and then we'll probably open it up for any last minute questions here.
And if you do have questions, because we're at the last maybe 18 or 20 minutes, if you have questions now, you can ask, and we'll try to answer as he goes along. So feel free to.
Okay, so I wanted to show you guys this, because you're going to run into this pretty soon, where, hey, I have this cool app that I threw together. Here's one that uses WebGL and web audio, because most of especially if you're going to do a game, it's going to need both of these. I'm just going to hit play, and it's going to do nothing. Wow, I expected this really cool app that I created to do something. So I'm going to open the console, okay, in Chrome. So I'm just looking at my app at this point, not in any IDE. I'm just in Chrome, and it's just racking up the errors down there, and it's still going. Okay, So failed to execute because something's in a broken state. Got it. Okay. So if I look at, I think we could probably stop that error. Yes. The only thing that's wrong with this is that it's running from a file and it doesn't have permissions. So what I get is 2,000 errors of invalid state. Failed to execute this. Not sure why I can't. Okay. And there we go. Because it was firing errors so fast, you didn't actually see the first error, which is this guy right here. So file has been blocked from loading by cross-origin resource sharing policy. So files are not allowed to access web resources when you're running it here. Google's trying to be nice to you. Make sure you don't open something by accident that formats your hard drive. So if we hit it as a web element, here we go. This is what this app's supposed to do.
Yes.
So I think there's some audio to this. Okay.
So this is where the audio guy dims the light and the bartender can come in now. He set up shop.
All right, so this is actually a kicker app. So it's reading, you can see here, it's reading the audio in real time and analyzing the audio in real time and adjusting this little 3GL animation, which you can actually interact with still. I can drag it around a little bit and look at it up and down. All right, in real time. So this is all JavaScript. This is pretty impressive for a language that got beat up for Facebook. Okay, so if it's done right, you can make. And again, this code is actually very simple to follow. The Dancer.js library is pretty cool. If you want to see how audio interacts with JavaScript at a low level, and with the graphics layer, this is an easy one to kind of dissect and sink your teeth into. Okay. Now, a good example here is these were. This was originally set to use MP3 files, but it actually renders OGG files faster because they have less CPU resource to decode. And when it's trying to register it and look at the FFT spectrum, it can actually build it out closer. Because you notice there's still a teeny bit of a delay. It might be the echo in here a little bit too. But you are asking it to do quite a bit right now. This is basically 3D visualization in real time with JavaScript. All right. So that's what that example's for. I would use, and obviously the soundboard example is for a very simple look at how you could build an app and how an app progresses. This is one of my favorite visual examples, and this runs across all your devices. This will run on even on the Tizen. So you can still hear the other ones running in the background. So if I close that one, which is somewhere, are you? There. Okay. All right, so I can edit this in real time. Okay, I'm zooming in, zooming out. Let's refresh. I zoomed too far out. Spin it around. Okay, and this is using 3D CSS, which is again hardware accelerated, a little simpler than WebGL. So when I say it's 3D CSS, any one of these sprite elements could be a iframe or a button, okay? It doesn't matter. Images are more interesting to look at as they go around, but you can go in and edit this code very simply, and it's also, this is just 100 lines of code, maybe even less. If you look in the 3D CSS example. Okay, it's all in this guy here. Let's see if it's, I don't know why it does it in Word. Why would you do that? Let me just open it with Notepad really quick here. All right, so these scenes, this is going to be pretty hard to look at this way. Should just open it in Aptana. But, so basically it's just this one sprite that gets loaded here. And it's an object, but you could add that scene object as, like I said, it could be a PNG file, it could be a document, it could be a web link, anything, right? So it could be an entire web page embedded in each one. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but hey, sky's the limit. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear the. Nginx is cross-platform, so I have Nginx installed on. Could we switch over to the Mac really quick, please? I'll finish up the last examples if there's questions there. There's the HexGL example, and the Halloween Tizen is my kids wanted the watch sounds, so on Tizen. So they're like, all right, my middle boy was Gandalf, so he wanted the "You shall not pass." I want that sound clip, and the eldest was Clash of Clans warrior, so he wanted the fireball, and then the little guy was he stormtrooper, so some kind of lightning bolt. So those are all in there, and that went over pretty well on Halloween. So, so yeah, have fun with it, right? That's what we're doing this for. So, okay, so Nginx is also for Mac. I actually strongly recommend it on Mac versus Windows. You have a lot of other things that kind of are already installed or kicking around. So first you need to install. Oh, can we go to the Mac screen? I'm sorry. I know it's the first time I've actually asked you to go to that one. Okay, so just so you guys believe me, I know you believe me, but all right. So I promise. Oh, my sound. Here we go. So this is perfect example. Okay, WebKit browser. This is Safari. Safari is not going to run this example, okay? Because, and I can tell you why. It's because the web audio on Safari is not built the same way that it is on standards browsers. So it's going to fail on the audio. It's not going to be able to read it. I had the same problem with BlackBerry with this because it doesn't do a standard web audio. All right, but the app is still it's there. And the other apps also run there on Safari. But let me get the answer that you wanted here. First, you have to install Brew. I'm not sure if you have on Mac yet. If you haven't, do Brew, Homebrew. There we go, the missing package manager right here. So if you go to brew.sh, you basically run this line here from a command line, and that'll get you Brew. And then you just type Brew. Brew is almost like apt-get for Linux. It's basically brew, install, whatever that you're probably missing in here. So, you know, what's wget? Like that's the standard way to get wget on Mac. Okay, so it downloads it, great. It's good to go now. I can use wget. Brew install Nginx. I think I already had it. It's already installed through Brew. So now I've got Nginx on here, and I can go localhost 8080, Nginx is up. So we actually do most of our development on Unix and Mac systems just because the hardware's nice and it's it's what most of you have, right? So
it's common with a lot of developers. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry, guys. We tried to bite off a pretty big piece here to actually get you started developing apps on a new platform that maybe you haven't ever developed on before, using new toolkits that you've probably never used before, new language that you've probably never used before, with a couple strange guys up here you've never seen before, on multiple operating systems. But definitely take what we've given you there, bless you, on the key, look at it. I'm telling you, this would have saved me a lot of time if I had this 10 years ago when I really started getting into heavy development. Just kind of pointers in the right direction. Again, use the Intel SDK. When you get home and you fire up the Intel SDK, you'll notice it'll work better than with our degraded internet right here, right now. But I guess if you don't have anything else, I think we probably need to wrap up. Well, we still have 6 minutes, so. Anyone else have any last questions or anything else you'd like to see? Would you like to see the demos on some of the other machines or CSS tools? So there is a CSS lint as well. That's a tough one, right? So you're telling yeah, so responsive design, is that particularly what you're getting at? Because you can do a lot with CSS. So Aptana has a couple plugins for CSS that help compartmentalize what, so at least you can see which classes you've already used. Especially, most of the examples here are pretty small for CSS of what you have. Once you get a big CSS file, it's difficult to go through it. Or you'll change something somewhere and you forget that, oh, it's in a different file or it's in multiple places. So CSS, like JavaScript, something to be careful of is it's not first come, first serve. It's you're going to overwrite. So if you define a class and then you define it again later, you could go back and fix that first one all you want. It doesn't matter. It's going to always get trumped by the last time you call it or make any kind of invocation to it. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're building your apps. Anything else?
From my perspective, I'd say, one, don't be afraid to fail. There's a lot of resources out there.
Yeah.
I've said it in jest that I don't write from scratch, but literally, there's no need for you to try to reinvent the wheel. With the abundance of frameworks and libraries out there, utilize them, build off of them, and customize them to your needs. I think there's a lot you can develop, and there's a lot of a good foundation and starting points that you can use to build off of. So I'd take advantage of them. Like I said, if you don't have a GitHub account, get one and just kind of browse around there. Search for different features or capabilities, certain things that interest you. And you'd be surprised what you find. And again, the wearables is a big thing. And it's still new to the enterprise. So if you can build in that direction, that kind of puts you at a better position than the other guys who are just building either for the desktop or just for the devices.
Now, for any of you that are moving on to the wearables, you do have the Tizen SDK in the folder. You can make sure it's the same version. I wasn't able to speak with them last minute to see what version they wanted to give you at the end, but it's there. And that uses Eclipse, which is the Aptana interface, so you'll be quite familiar with that part of it.
Can you go to the last slide with our contact information?
Yes, I can.
On the main computer.
Can we go back to the main computer really quick, please?
Go ahead. What, for Aptana? Yeah. It's the Aptana guy.
I'm sorry, what's that? The JDK. But I have, let's see, if you look, I think I grabbed the 64-bit for both.
Because when I tried to launch it, it says that it could not find the JDK shared library. And then when I Googled for it, it says that Aptana requires a 32-bit JDK.
Okay, did you install the JDK that was included there?
Because I already had JDK installed.
Oh, you might have an older version. What do you?
It's JDK 7.
Oh, it's 1.7, really? Okay. I can take a quick look if you want. Well, yeah. Yeah, find me after.
Do you guys recommend using compiled CSS like Flash or
Absolutely, absolutely. So I'd stated earlier, I use Clojure on all my code afterwards to compile all my JavaScript and down in size. But definitely, you could do the same thing. Sass is a great one for CSS. Your mileage may vary. Just remember, when you compile it down, you're probably not saving a whole lot of space once it gets bundled up with the runtime and pushed out to the device, it's not huge amounts. But of course, the way I look at it is the less bits need to get crunched, the faster the app's going to run in the end. So, and big CSS, sometimes it can get very large. So, go ahead.
So, I found out that the gyro gets a limited sample rate in the browser and Android for some power reasons. But if I do a hybrid app, do I get more device access?
So this is actually a very good question. It depends on the platforms, okay? It also depends on what security measures have been installed. So for example, a Samsung device with Knox on it, you may not get away with some of the loopholes. So be careful, because most of them are loopholes. I know at previous days with BlackBerry, you could get away with a lot of things on the web API layer because they'd open it up. But even on the native layer, you couldn't because the security holes weren't plugged for whatever reason. So sometimes you can, but just remember, you're probably working on borrowed time, right? So you should have close parity as far as what features you have access to. Usually the web will lag a little bit behind the native, right? Because they get developed in native and they have to get ported over. So JavaScript can have hooks into those calls. I know ours, yeah, every place I've ever been lags a little bit. So, but by lagging, generally the security measures are less because they look at it as less of a security threat because it doesn't have as much features. So I know, because I've actually written at least 2 apps that have exploited those for customers that they needed that functionality. And so sometimes it offers an alternative path, right, if you're getting stuck. Just food for thought. But generally they're in parity.
There you go. Go ahead. That's a good question.
That's a good question. Do we have anyone from? Do you guys know who handles the actual content afterwards? The radio. Okay.
Jarvis.
Yeah.
So we should have everybody's contact information, especially emails. What will happen is we can have that information being sent out if it's allowed to be actually handed out as public information. I think it shouldn't be a problem, and I'll try my best to get that out to everybody here.
Sure. There's nothing in this presentation that I would consider proprietary. And again, you have the best part of the presentation anyway with the tools and the source code to kind of dig through. But
I will say that if you don't hear from us, you have our contact information, and we both have copies of this deck. So if you shoot us an email, I don't mind just replying with an attached copy of it. So
yeah, they generally like to wait till after the conference is over. So
correct.
We just blast it out to you, but I don't see emails in the list there. So. Yeah, Accelerator's another one that's doing the same thing. So,
I've seen Xamarin in action as well, and I know that a lot of people at a dev shop specifically that uses Xamarin, and they do the C# stuff, and it does build for the platform as well.
So that's what this does. I was trying to give you guys a basic start, so you have some simple HTML that you can push out. They're all free tools here, so there's nothing's license infringed here. Everything's open source. So when you start getting into Xamarin or Accelerator, Titanium, you're gonna be paying for it. But it's a service. Again, I like the Intel one because I think it offers 99% of that stuff, and I'm going to use my own libraries anyway, so that works for me. But
there's one that you don't have the native compilation. So they have a container review which has only
right, but again, native is kind of a picky word because we are compiling it to a native APK file that's being run in kind of a web view in that Blink Blink view, with access to all the underlying APIs. I mean, I guess if someone thinks that you shouldn't call that native because it's it started as JavaScript, then okay, all right. But for all intents and purposes, it's a native app. You have access to those, even the lower level C calls if you need to.
Yeah.
So.
I think we're like 3 minutes, 4 minutes past the hour.
All right,
so.
thank you everyone for your attention, and enjoy the rest of the conference.